It was a bright spring morning, the kind that usually brought laughter and excitement to the little kindergarten at the end of Maple Street. The children were busy playing in the sunlit yard, their laughter echoing through the air. Among them was 5-year-old Lily, a lively girl with a pink backpack and pigtails bouncing as she ran. Her mother, Sarah, had dropped her off earlier that morning with a kiss on the forehead and a promise to pick her up after work. Everything seemed ordinary, calm, and safe, until that afternoon, when ordinary turned into nightmare. When Sarah arrived at the kindergarten gate, she noticed something strange. The other children were running to their parents, teachers were waving goodbye, but Lily was nowhere in sight. She scanned the small crowd, expecting to see her daughter's smiling face, but her name remained unanswered. Sarah walked up to Lily's teacher, Miss Turner, who was gathering toys from the playground. "Where's Lily?" Sarah asked, half smiling, half concerned. The teacher froze, confused. "She was just here a few minutes ago. She was playing by the sandbox." Those words hit Sarah like a cold wave. Within seconds, the playground was no longer filled with laughter, it was filled with shouts. Teachers began searching behind trees, calling Lily's name, checking the bathrooms, the classrooms, even the small storage shed at the back. One of the older kids mentioned seeing Lily walking toward the gate, but no one saw her leave. The gate was slightly ajar, swinging gently in the wind. Panic set in as the realization hit that the 5-year-old was missing. Sarah's hands shook as she called the police, her voice trembling so badly she could barely explain what had happened. Within half an hour, patrol cars arrived, blue and red lights flashing against the walls of the kindergarten. Officers began asking questions, taking statements, organizing a search team. The neighborhood quickly turned into a search zone. Volunteers spread out through nearby streets, shouting Lily's name into the fading daylight. Police dogs were brought in, sniffing Lily's small sweater that Sarah had kept in her car. They caught a scent leading toward the woods behind the school but lost it near a small stream. The sun began to set, and the once cheerful playground was now wrapped in fear and confusion. Helicopters hovered overhead, flashlights cut through the trees, and the sound of walkie-talkies echoed through the night. Sarah stood near the gate, hugging Lily's pink backpack to her chest. She could still smell her daughter's shampoo on the straps, still feel the faint warmth where her hands used to be. Every second that passed made the silence heavier, the hope dimmer. The teachers cried quietly, guilt washing over them for not noticing sooner. A police officer gently guided Sarah to a patrol car, asking her to rest, but she refused to leave. She stayed there, staring into the dark, praying for any sign of her little girl. Hours turned into days. News channels showed Lily's photo, and flyers covered telephone poles across town. Strangers came to help search the woods, and neighbors left food at Sarah's door. But no matter how many times they combed the area, there was nothing, no footprints, no clothing, no clue. It was as if the earth had swallowed her whole. On the fourth night, after yet another fruitless search, Sarah sat in Lily's room surrounded by her toys. The tiny shoes by the bed, the drawings on the wall, the stuffed rabbit that Lily never slept without, all reminders of a presence that was now an unbearable absence. She whispered her daughter's name into the silence, her tears soaking the pillow. Somewhere deep down, a voice inside her refused to believe Lily was gone forever. She couldn't explain it, but she felt it, her daughter was still out there. And one day, somehow, she would find her. Full year had crawled by since the day Lily vanished. Seasons had come and gone, each one leaving a deeper ache in Sarah's heart. The once busy kindergarten had returned to its routine, but the shadow of that missing child still lingered in the corners of the playground. Parents still glanced nervously at the gate when they dropped their kids off, and the teachers still paused every time a child wandered too far. For Sarah, time had not moved at all. Every morning she woke up expecting to hear Lily's laughter echoing down the hall. And every night she went to bed clutching her daughter's pink blanket, whispering a silent prayer that tomorrow might bring her home. The police had long labeled the case a mystery without leads. The search had been exhaustive, hundreds of volunteers, dogs, drones, and interviews, but nothing concrete had ever surfaced. The case file now sat in a dusty cabinet at the precinct under the label, "Cold Case, Lily Harper." For everyone else, life had moved on. But for Sarah, each day was just another battle between hope and despair. She left Lily's room untouched, the bed neatly made, the toys arranged the way they'd been a year ago, and the drawings still taped to the wall. Sometimes she would sit in that room for hours, replaying memories in her mind, trying to remember every detail of that morning, wondering if she had missed something, some small sign that could have stopped it. Sarah had tried everything. She had spoken to private investigators, followed false tips from strangers online, and even consulted psychics when desperation took over. Nothing ever led anywhere. Each disappointment only deepened the silence that filled her home. Friends had stopped visiting after months of offering comfort that no longer helped. Even the police officers stopped returning her calls. It was as if the world had given up on her daughter. But Sarah couldn't. A mother doesn't stop feeling the pull of her child, no matter the distance or time. Somewhere deep inside, she knew Lily was still out there. One quiet evening, Sarah sat on her couch scrolling through her phone absent-mindedly. It had become a nightly ritual, reading old messages, looking through photos of Lily's smile, trying to hold onto what she had left. Suddenly, a small pop-up appeared on her screen. Apple AirTag detected near you. This item has been moving with you. Her heart skipped a beat. She frowned, confused. She didn't own any AirTags. But then she remembered, months before Lily disappeared, she had attached a small AirTag to her daughter's backpack, just as a precaution. It was something she had done casually, never imagining it might one day matter. Her hands began to tremble as she opened the Find My app. A small pulsing dot appeared on the map. Her breath caught when she realized where it was. The signal wasn't miles away. It wasn't at the school or in some distant location. It was right there, inside her house. The screen zoomed in until the dot sat squarely beneath the outline of her own home. She rose slowly, her phone glowing in her hand as she followed the signal through the hallway. It led her to the basement door. The moment she opened it, a cold draft hit her face. Her heart pounded louder with each creak of the wooden stairs. The signal strengthened as she descended, the dot flashing closer and closer to her position. It stopped near the corner of the room, under the old shelves stacked with boxes and paint cans. The app kept pinging, steady, rhythmic, alive. Sarah stood there, frozen in disbelief. The AirTag she had placed on her daughter a year ago was here, beneath her feet, buried under her own floor. A chill ran through her spine as her mind tried to make sense of it. Someone had been here. Someone had brought it back. Her breathing quickened, fear and hope tangling in her chest. Could it mean Lily was alive? Or was it something darker, someone taunting her, leaving a cruel message after all this time? The silence in the basement felt heavy, almost listening. Sarah clutched her phone, the glow of the screen reflecting off her tear-streaked face. For the first time in a year, she felt the quiet stir of something she hadn't dared to feel in months, possibility. The nightmare wasn't over. It was only beginning again. Sarah stood at the top of the basement stairs, her heart racing so fast she could feel it pounding in her throat. The AirTag signal on her phone blinked steadily, the small circle pulsing with every second that passed. Her mind was spinning with questions. How could it be here? Who brought it? Was it really Lily's, or just a coincidence? But deep down, she knew it wasn't a mistake. That tiny device had been attached to her daughter's pink backpack, the same one she had clutched on the night Lily disappeared. She descended the steps slowly, the wooden boards creaking under her weight. The basement smelled of dust and dampness, a faint mustiness that she had never really noticed before. The flashlight from her phone cast long, shaky shadows across the walls, making the shelves and boxes seem alive. The sound of her own breathing filled the silence. She moved toward the corner where the signal was strongest, each step heavier than the last. The app showed the AirTag was only a few feet away now, directly under the spot where she stored old paint cans and holiday decorations. Setting the phone down on a nearby crate, Sarah pushed the shelf aside. It scraped loudly against the concrete, sending echoes through the empty space. Beneath it, the floor looked slightly different, dusty everywhere except for one patch where the concrete appeared newer, smoother, as if someone had recently tampered with it. Her throat tightened. She crouched down and touched the surface. It was cold and rough, but in that moment, she felt something else, a faint vibration, like a soft hum, coming from beneath. The AirTag's faint beep sounded again, muffled but distinct. Adrenaline surged through her veins. She ran upstairs, grabbed a hammer and crowbar, and rushed back down. Her hands trembled as she began chipping at the floor. The sound of metal striking concrete echoed sharply, filling the basement with a rhythm of panic and desperation. Dust rose around her, stinging her eyes, but she didn't stop. With each hit, fragments of concrete broke away, revealing dark, damp earth underneath. Her arms burned, her breath came in gasps, but she kept digging, driven by something stronger than fear, the unrelenting hope of a mother who refused to stop searching. After several minutes, she heard it again, a tiny metallic ping. She froze, wiping sweat from her forehead, then brushed away the dirt with her hands. There, half buried in the soil, was a small metal box, rusted and dirty. Her fingers shook as she pulled it free. It was heavier than she expected. She pried open the latch with the crowbar, the metal creaking in protest. Inside lay a few small items wrapped in a torn piece of cloth. Sarah unfolded it slowly, her heart pounding in her ears. The first thing she saw was a familiar pink hair clip shaped like a butterfly. She recognized it instantly, it had been Lily's favorite. She used to wear it every morning before school. Next to it was something even more shocking, a small, white circular device. The AirTag, the same one she had synced to her phone a year ago. Its light blinked faintly, still active after all this time. Sarah gasped, tears spilling down her cheeks. Her trembling hands lifted the clip and held it close to her chest. She could almost smell her daughter's shampoo, hear her giggle echoing faintly in her mind. But as the wave of emotion hit her, so did dread. How did these things end up here? Who buried them? The box hadn't been there before, she was certain of it. Someone had entered her home, someone who knew exactly what they were doing. The idea made her skin crawl. She looked around the basement, every shadow suddenly feeling alive, every sound amplified. The air felt heavy, suffocating. Her phone buzzed again, startling her. The notification blinked on the screen. Item detected nearby, moving. Sarah's heart dropped. The AirTag wasn't still. Something, or someone, was moving it. She turned slowly toward the darkened corner of the basement, her breathing sharp and unsteady. For the first time since her daughter disappeared, she wasn't sure if she was closer to finding Lily, or if she had just opened a door to something far more terrifying. Police cars filled the street outside Sarah's house, their flashing lights painting red and blue across the old walls. Neighbors gathered quietly behind the yellow tape, whispering to one another as officers moved in and out of the house. Sarah sat on the edge of the basement steps, her hands shaking as she tried to steady her breath. She could barely process what had just happened. The AirTag, the hair clip, the metal box, it all felt like a nightmare she couldn't wake from. A detective knelt beside her, speaking softly, asking her to recount what she had seen and done. She told him everything, every sound, every detail, her voice trembling with disbelief. Downstairs, forensic officers worked carefully under bright portable lights. They photographed the spot where Sarah had dug into the floor, dusted for fingerprints, and examined the small tunnel that the lead investigator had discovered after removing more concrete. It was narrow and rough, leading deep beneath the basement. The officers followed it cautiously, flashlights cutting through the darkness until it opened into a low, concrete shaft. The smell of earth and decay was strong. One officer radioed back, confirming what they had suspected. It connected directly to an old maintenance tunnel once used by workers when the kindergarten and the neighboring houses were being built decades earlier. Sarah listened in shock as they explained. The tunnel stretched under several properties, including the kindergarten itself. It had been sealed years ago, forgotten as the new school was expanded. But someone had known it existed, and had used it. The realization hit her hard. Whoever had taken Lily must have known the area well, must have had access to both the school and her house. It wasn't random. It was planned. Detective Owens, the lead investigator, asked Sarah if she remembered anyone who might have worked at the school or lived nearby who seemed unusual or too interested in her daughter. She thought back to that time, to faces and names that had long faded in her mind. Then one name came up, Mr. Harris, the janitor. He was quiet, polite, and often stayed late cleaning after everyone had left. He had lived next door in a small rental unit owned by the school district. Sarah remembered how Lily used to greet him every morning, always waving when they passed. After the disappearance, he had vanished too. She assumed he had moved away like everyone else who couldn't bear the whispers and stares. Owens made a call, and within minutes, officers were digging into old employee records. They found his name, Harold Harris, a former maintenance worker who had resigned abruptly just a week after Lily went missing. No forwarding address, no family listed. His last known location had been a small town 2 hours away, where, as the detective later confirmed, he had died in a construction accident months earlier. Sarah listened in stunned silence as they revealed the details. His death had gone unnoticed in connection to her case, and no one had thought to question it. But then came the strangest part. When forensics examined the AirTag, they found recent movement logs, just 2 days old. It had been disconnected and reactivated again. Someone had touched it. Someone alive. The detective's tone grew serious. If Harris was dead, who had the AirTag? Who had buried it beneath her floor? Sarah's stomach twisted as dread seeped back in. Maybe Harris hadn't acted alone. Maybe someone had helped him. The investigators began to search for anyone connected to him. That's when they found her, Evelyn Harris, his younger sister. She had occasionally helped him clean the kindergarten during summer breaks and lived in the same town until recently. According to public records, she had sold her home 3 months ago and disappeared. The police now had a new lead, but the implications were horrifying. If Evelyn had been involved, she could still be hiding somewhere nearby, with Lily. Sarah's heart raced as the thought formed in her mind. The AirTag's signal wasn't a coincidence. It was a trail, a message, maybe even a cry for help. As detectives packed up and the basement fell silent again, Sarah stared at the gaping hole in the floor, the tunnel descending into darkness. She realized that her home had been more than a place of grief, it had been a part of the secret all along. The truth was closer than anyone had imagined, and now the truth was finally stirring back to life. The following night was one of the longest of Sarah's life. She hadn't slept at all, her thoughts spinning relentlessly between fear and hope. The police had left her house under watch, promising to keep tracking the AirTag's signal. For hours, the location had remained still. Then, just past midnight, her phone buzzed again. The same alert appeared on the screen. AirTag detected nearby, item is moving. Her heart jumped. The dot was no longer in her basement. It was moving, slowly but steadily, away from the house, cutting through the edge of town and into the woods near the old kindergarten. She immediately called Detective Owens, who answered on the first ring. Within minutes, several patrol cars and a K-9 unit were dispatched. Sarah insisted on going with them, and though Owens hesitated, he finally relented, knowing nothing could stop her. The convoy drove through the empty streets, headlights slicing through the misty darkness. The closer they got to the woods, the more uneasy everyone became. The air was damp and cold, filled with the sound of rustling leaves. The signal's dot pulsed brighter, guiding them deeper into the overgrown forest. Eventually, they came upon an old path that led to a cluster of abandoned cabins. The structures were decaying, covered in ivy and moss, their windows shattered and doors hanging crookedly from rusted hinges. The AirTag's signal was strongest at the far end of the clearing. Sarah's hands shook as she held her phone, the tiny circle pulsing faster, closer. Owens motioned for everyone to spread out and move cautiously. Flashlights swept across the clearing, illuminating footprints in the damp soil, fresh ones, small, like a child's. Sarah's breath caught. When they reached the cabin, the door was locked from the outside with a metal chain. Owens broke it open with a crowbar, and the group entered carefully. The inside was dim and cold, lit only by the beams of their flashlights. The smell was stale, of dust and mold, but underneath it was something softer, a faint scent of soap, of fabric, of life. A blanket was spread across the floor beside a small lantern. There were empty cans, a child's shoe, and a small stuffed rabbit, dirt-stained but familiar. Sarah froze where she stood. It was Lily's toy, the one she had clutched every night before bed. A quiet sound broke the silence, a whimper, weak and trembling, coming from the far corner. Sarah's heart stopped. She turned her flashlight toward the sound, and there, half hidden behind a stack of old boxes, was a small figure. A little girl, frail, her hair longer and tangled, her face pale and frightened. The moment their eyes met, Sarah's world shattered and rebuilt itself all at once. "Lily," she whispered, barely able to breathe. For a moment, the girl didn't move. Then she whispered back, "Mommy." Sarah ran forward, tears blurring her vision, and pulled her daughter into her arms. Lily's small body shook against her chest, and Sarah held her tighter than she ever had before. The officers stood back, letting the moment unfold in silence. After a year of fear and emptiness, Sarah finally felt warmth again, the warmth of her child alive in her arms. Lily's voice was weak, but she began to speak, explaining what little she remembered. A nice lady had taken her after the bad man went away. She said the lady kept her in different places, told her to stay hidden, and said her mommy was looking for her. It was clear now, Evelyn Harris, the janitor's sister, had been hiding her all along. As the paramedics wrapped Lily in a blanket and led her out of the cabin, Sarah looked around one last time. The AirTag sat blinking faintly on the floor beside the blanket, the same device that had led her to the truth. It had never stopped working, just waiting for someone to notice. Outside, the first hint of dawn touched the trees, turning the sky pale gold. Sarah held Lily close as they walked toward the flashing police lights, feeling her heartbeat against her own. The nightmare was over. The world, once dark and silent, was finally filled with the sound she had prayed for every night for a year, her daughter's voice whispering, "Mommy, I missed you."